Hello and welcome to Red is the New Green. First things first, some of you might have realized that there is an error in the title or the subtitle of this workshop. At least my grammar coach told me that. And then you might think that he's German and there are some mistakes. It's not a big deal. What if you were wrong? What if I tell you that I chose the title intentionally precisely that way? Think about that for a moment, and I'll come back to this later so that it, hopefully, makes total sense. My name is Daus. I'm a Red Team leader with Red Team Thinking, and I work as an consultant with organizations around the world to enable them to think critically about their business. As an consultant, I do not provide answers. I profoundly believe that you already have those. I provide you the tools that help you find them. Here's some food for thought. Nobel Prize-winning economist Thomas Schelling came up with a quote: "One thing a person cannot do, no matter how rigorous his analysis or heroic his imagination, is to draw up a list of things that would never occur to him." Think about that for a second. Schelling explains why it is helpful to play through games that represent actual scenarios when thinking about strategy questions. Because in playing such games and then talking about them afterward, you discover issues that you would not previously have considered, like the reasons why another player might either trust or mistrust statements you made. Let's draw a picture of that. Here's a problem or an actual scenario. And here are some experts looking at it, trying to figure out what this scenario is all about. As Schelling pointed out, games can also help to clarify the difference between what people say and what people do, and how other players perceive such a difference. Let's move this image to the left. And here we have some other players playing the same game, looking at the same actual situation. Let's keep that for a while. I did a banker's training and study economics. I'm also a financial risk manager certified by GARP, the Global Association of Risk Professionals. And I hold a certificate in quantitative finance. Given that, let's take a real work example from the financial industry. As you can easily spot here, that is a relatively common financial product. It was one of the root causes of the financial crisis 15 years ago. For those who are not that confident with mathematics, that is a bet on the change in the yield curve between the Swiss franc and the Japanese yen. This product has been sold numerous times to municipalities in Germany that neither had a Swiss franc or Japanese yen position. Well, the question is now, is it a good or a bad product? Most people will argue that this is a bad product because it caused issues during the financial crisis. On the other hand, if you ask risk managers, they might tell you it is a good product because it helps mitigate risky positions. So the answer is not that easy, obviously. It is neither, nor it depends. The product itself is not a bad one. It is what it is. If you believe that the yield curve between those two currencies turns in one specific direction, this product might be a good idea. However, it will be pure speculation if you do not have a position in one of those currencies, which again is neither good nor bad. No one will have a problem with you investing in such a position if you use your money. Using other people's money can cause trouble, as we saw 15 years ago. Municipalities use taxes, causing them to heap debts. This was just a simple interest derivative product. But we can also create a much more complex product with a similar equation. We can base that product on almost anything we can think of: credits, liquidity, and even on the weather. All of such products can be easily calculated with mathematics. If you're not a mathematician, you might have some trouble understanding what the product means. And that is precisely the reason why we cannot simply create such products and throw them on the market. Before the financial crisis, such products, mainly based on credit, were relatively new to the market. Many investment banks tried to get into the game of trading those. Due to the relaxation of regulation, it was easy to create and trade them. Many analysts, the so-called rocket scientists of Wall Street, did not fully understand how they are priced. But no one wanted to be the one who said, "I don't get it." And thus they traded something they had no clue how it worked. You know the history. They simply refused to examine the box they were sitting in. Today, the board of directors needs to decide if such products should be offered at all, making it harder to place those products. The rationale behind that is to clearly think and document any new product before someone offers it to other market participants. But since the board members are no mathematicians either, banks are bound by the regulation to document such products. Despite the current regulations, believe it or not, you only need 3 pages to describe the product, including pricing it, justify the risk exposure for the firm, and explain how to hedge it properly. In fact, some institutions still create products on that basis daily and offer them to the market. And this process is fully automated. But again, this is neither good nor bad. It forces one side to think more deeply about the products. It does not help the other side deciding if they need such a product or not. During the financial crisis, Joseph Cassano, former AIG executive, explained after such a product turned bad, "It is hard for us, without being flippant, to see a scenario within any kind of realm of reason that would see us losing $1 in any of those transactions." Obviously, banks could not see the whole picture to verify the downside of those products because they did not examine the product or the problem from all possible perspectives. This is what I mean by this picture. Today we talk about black swan events. These are events so improbable that we hardly think they are even possible. So why is that? Let's take a simple example of what I mean with examining a problem from all possible perspectives. I give you a simple task. You need to make a decision about what we will talk. And to make it a bit easier, here's a hint. What we are looking for is a letter. Imagine you are sitting in a meeting room and I show you this. Before you decide, think about it from different perspectives. Most of you might come up with the letter M. And frankly, that is a nice try for the first shot. Now imagine you are sitting in a meeting room around a table, and the letter is not attached to the wall, but placed on the table, so that people from the opposite side of the table come up with a different decision about this letter. Like this. They might come up with the letter W. So, which one is now correct? You might now think that both are correct, and that you only need to decide which side is up and which is down. Easy thing. But what if I tell you that both are wrong? What if I tell you that you are missing the context? Just because the first idea seems logical does not mean it is the correct one. With red team thinking, we always tell clients that they need to slow down first to speed up. We tell them that they should not just think outside the box, but they need to examine the box. That means, if I give you more context and we slow down, in this case, zoom out, you realize that there's another perspective that reveals what we're actually looking for. And this is the letter sigma from the Greek alphabet. This is what people mean if they talk about know your business. Here's an example of someone who did this already in the 16th century, thinking about your business. This gentleman is Pope Sixtus V, and he faced a lot of canonizations of saints at his time. The reason was that many candidates have been nominated and explained why they need to become saints. Pope Sixtus V established the office of the promoter of faith, or today better known as the Advocatus Diaboli. In plain English, that is the devil's advocate. His job was to find evidence that argued against the canonization of a candidate in order to uncover any character flaws or misrepresentation. But this know your business stuff was not just in the 16th century. We have seen this numerous times, for example, during the Yom Kippur War in the 1970s. At that time there was tension in the Middle East, since Israel occupied the Sinai and the Golan Heights after the Six-Day War in 1967. Israel was aware of a counterstrike and therefore developed what they called the concept. However, they based it on groupthink and a lot of assumptions. By October 1973, the concept had been proven. It was a given that Egypt would not go to war while still inferior in the air. Therefore, although the Israelis believed Syria was preparing for some sort of military action, by the tenets of the concept, Syria would not attack. But again, history showed us they did. And although many intelligence agencies had warned Israel, but they stuck with their concept. To ensure that the mistake of the Yom Kippur War was not being repeated, Israel installed a devil's advocate office in their intelligence agency. The task of that office was to challenge all future concepts and assumptions. It became known by the codename Ipcha Mistabra, which means, on the contrary, the reality appears otherwise in Aramaic. In the future, this has also been adopted by the US military and the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. After the Iraq War, the US military identified many issues that could have been prevented if all available information had been taken into account. And there has been a lot of information from first-hand knowledge from Iraqis. Unfortunately, that information never made it to the headquarters to influence their decisions. The CIA installed a devil's advocate office known as the Red Cell that challenges assumptions and situations as lessons learned. And as a result, they provide a contrary position to the US President in his daily briefing. However, and I'm not quite sure if that is true, but it is said that the Trump administration didn't use that contrarian perspective. If it is true, then that explains a lot of results of decisions made recently. Doesn't it? So, what can we learn from that? We need to break up groupthink. Groupthink is always our enemy. That means if everybody thinks alike, then at least one person is not thinking at all. Remember that. It is unlikely, also known a black swan, that all meeting participants have the same opinion. Hence, we need to challenge that. So if everyone has the same opinion, we need to challenge that. What we need is different perspectives, not just from the experts, but also from the ones at the front office, not the back office. Not the ones who do the calculations, but also the ones who receive the information directly from clients, for example. And then it's easy to think about. If it works in the financial sector, if it works in the religious sector, the church, and if it works in the military, it will work in any other industry as well. And the reason is easy. Critical thinking is agnostic. Don't believe me? Let's take a look at climate change. Some interesting insights have been neglected so far. There must be a reason why nature lets rivers meander through the landscape. The reason is it helps to slow down the water and thus, as a result, can prevent floods. However, if we try to make rivers straight, it does exactly the opposite. Hence, there are a lot of projects to renaturalize rivers again. Interesting thing. Then I was looking for a new home some years ago. I talked to many real estate brokers. There was a house that we liked and we were interested in buying. It had a great floor plan. All the living rooms were outside, so they all had at least one window or even a balcony. On the other hand, the bathroom and the toilet were inside, surrounded from the other rooms. And it had an appropriate ventilation. A park was just around the corner, so that the kids would have had plenty of room to play in the greenery too. There was only one problem. The house was made of concrete. Therefore, I asked the realtor, how should I hang a picture without immediately getting out the impact drill? And she answered that concrete is a modern building material and that was no problem at all. I thought it was also stupid that concrete does not breathe. So it cannot not absorb any moisture, quickly leading to mold in the interior bathroom. Her answer to that, no problem, there are modern ventilation systems for that. As you can imagine, we did not buy the house. But this example clearly shows how we currently deal with the issue of ecology. We're just treating the symptoms without solving the real problem. Here too, there is a lot of information that we do not use for current decision making. For example, there are also projects here of the so-called sponge cities, like Berlin. There, people are trying to keep the water in the city, utilizing green spaces rather than diverting it away through canals. Example, we call it Alexanderplatz, the Alexander Square. It's not the most beautiful part of Berlin. I think it's in fact the worst. But anyway, the square is a single concrete desert where the water can only run off through canals. If large amounts of rainfall occur here, as we have seen more frequently in recent times in the west of Germany, it's actually just around the corner, not far from here, the channels are no longer sufficient to drain this away, and flooding occurs even in the middle of Berlin. So here too, it's just the opposite of what we thought they're doing right before. So in the past we thought we need to get out the water from the cities. And then we planned everything in grey with concrete, sealing all the surfaces. And today we know that doesn't work, because sealing the surface means if we have too much of water, it cannot get into the ground anymore. So it needs to flow somewhere. And the least we want is that it flows into the houses. So we want the water to stay outside in the nature. We made those decisions rationally in the past. But I believe Adam Smith was wrong. The rational choice theory states that individuals use rational calculations to make rational choices and achieve outcomes that are aligned with their own personal objectives. These results are also associated with maximizing an individual's self-interest. Using rational choice theory is expected to result in outcomes that provide people with the most significant benefit and satisfaction, given the limited option they have available. And again, history tells us otherwise. It was assumed that human beings made fundamentally rational decisions for at least 3 centuries unless they were swayed by strong emotion or lacked information. Today, we know that numerous biases and heuristics affect our decision-making. And if we do not challenge those, we will still make the wrong decisions, regardless of the way we do calculations for risk management or creating strategies or plannings with the best employees available. Companies invest a fortune to find the best talents on the market, just to let them huddle together in meetings and let them do their groupthink. And this is something we need to address. Red team thinking addresses these issues and provides options to break up groupthink, challenge assumptions, question biases, and help to implement diversity and inclusion by taking all people into account. If you want to try that in your organization, here's an approach that you can easily apply right away in your next meeting. How can you do that? Well, in your next meeting, regardless of the reason for it, implement these 2 rules. First, nobody speaks twice until everybody speaks once. That causes the extroverts in the meeting to not fire all their ideas at once, but also enables at the same time the introverts to come up with their ideas. These are the ideas which are usually not being heard. In every meeting, participants should come up with at least one idea for a topic. Otherwise, in my opinion, they do not even belong to that meeting. Then you have the wrong people on the meeting. But I have never been in a meeting so far where I met a single person who came not up with at least one answer, regardless of who you invited to that meeting. Even if it's not an expert. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a voice and should have a voice. And you should listen to that. To ensure that you really get all ideas honestly, apply the second rule. And that is, think, write and share. Before accepting answers, give everyone time to think about their answer. Usually a minute is sufficient. Then ask everyone to write their ideas down. Writing forces the brain to think even deeper about a topic. And secondly, the answer is then written on paper. And no one can say, I was thinking of something different. So it's proof that that's their own idea. After that, ask the participants to share their ideas. They could either tell them, you can collect them on a whiteboard, you can attach them to a corkboard or something alike. But always remember rule 1, not 2 at once. Usually you will have participants who come up with 5 or 6 ideas and some with just 1. And that's okay. At least if everyone comes up with a minimum of 1 idea. As a result, you will come up with more answers than you would usually get. Trust me. Most often, you will also be surprised which answers you will get because this procedure ensures you get ideas from all sides of the table and not just from one. Remember our task earlier before, where you were looking for the Greek sigma? This is precisely that. With red team thinking, we not only address the simple things, we use a whole toolkit for all possible situations, like Devil's Troika, a technique designed to stress testing strategies, plans and hypotheses before committing to one of them, or weighted anonymous feedback, a system for assessing what people really think of an idea or option. Influencer engineering, a tool designed to examine an issue from the point of view of key stakeholders. Pre-mortem analysis, a technique for figuring out how a plan could go wrong and exposing the hidden weaknesses in it. Swan dive, the systematic method for exploring the ways in which a future event could play out or impact a particular plan. The enemy within, a tool designed to expose the things an organization is doing to defeat itself. Did you ever thought of establishing your own devil's advocacy office? You could challenge plans and assumptions your organization makes daily. Did you ever want to become your own enemy? You can find out about potential flaws your competition already knows and exploits. Did you ever ask yourself about the rationale behind a made decision? I bet you did, or at least your employees did. I heard that repeatedly in organizations on the floors or the kitchens. In any case, if you have further questions, please get in touch. You can send me an email at andre.daus@redteamthinking.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or send me a direct message, and you even can call me. Happy to connect. So, thank you for thinking with me. As I promised at the beginning, I will reveal the meaning behind the title for this workshop. Red is the new green. I guess this is already obvious, isn't it? We know that kind of wording from other parts of our lives. Or maybe you have seen the series on Amazon, like Orange is the new black. And you now think that red in Red is the new green means red team thinking. You're probably right, but you might want to think again. If you now think the different, you will realize that we live in times where the temperature rose already from the green sector to the red sector. Regarding our environment, Mother Nature and the planet, we need to be on alert. How thinking different helps risk management to adapt to tomorrow's challenges. That's a subtitle. Every one of us is thinking differently. That is no surprise. That is by nature, and is precisely the reason why diverse groups are better at identifying different perspectives of problems. But those who dare to think the different things and different perspectives can make a real impact. That is what we need to improve our thinking and to improve our decision making. So always remember, keep challenge your thinking.